Alright, let's see if I can do this without screwing it up. So, welcome to my version of the healing bench. And we're going to do a little homage to Big Clive and tear this thing to bits. Unfortunately, it's not the first time I've done it. This camera's been out and running for about a month now. I've been really happy with it. So much so I bought a second one. I've done one mod to it. But it's a Jennov pan tilt zoom 5 megapixel. It's 4 megapixel, but it does 5, but it doesn't interpolate it or something and screws up the aspect ratio. But at 4 megapixel, it runs great. Been running 24/7 nonstop and works really good in the night. Has 2 long-range IR sensors and 2 wide-field ones, or not sensors, LEDs, and this thing will flat light up a good 150 feet, so 50-60 meters, and it's bright, so bright that as it pans around it trips off all my other security cameras for motion, so I've had to do some tricks to make it not do that. So anyway, this video we're just going to tear it to bits, show you what's inside, so I'm going to try to do a firmware hack on it if I can figure out how to do that, but one thing at a time. So first step, there's a single screw here, and oddly enough it's also a captured screw, so it won't fall out, which is nice. That one screw comes out, lid pops off. That's plastic, and I gotta say, this thing it's pretty impressive. This front here is aluminum. This is also where it sinks out all the heat, and it's never dewed up. I've never had a problem with dew. I even pressure washed it once. It's pretty cool. Housing is plastic, which is meh. This little part here is plastic, but this comes back to aluminum again, so that's kind of cool. So anyway, let's get this thing torn down, and that'll be that. First step after getting the lid off, we have to take out these 4 screws here. Got me stripping it. I'll probably fast forward through half of this because who wants to watch this in real time as I futz around. Should be using a nicer screwdriver. Let's see if this one will do any better. Nope. So I'm pretty certain this front assembly comes as a Lego brick from another manufacturer. Probably the same one they use in the Hikvision cameras, because I think I've seen that logo inside on one of the boards. Appears to be an M400 board camera inside with the zoom and tilt features all built in, or the zoom and pan. And there's a little bit of interesting, but oddly enough, I'm somewhat impressed by this thing. It works really nice. The pan and tilt is fairly tight. So alright, with that off now, you get the board camera that comes out. I'm going to pop this little connector off here, which is Ethernet and power. This little connector is the 12 volt to the infrared LEDs and the sensor. And then this one is a serial connection that goes to this stepper board. So this board here in the front, all it does is drive these 2 steppers for the pan and tilt. This board on the back is the stepper drivers for the zoom and focus. And then we've got a audio cable here, which is a little funny. It's a 2-pin audio cable, but it goes into a 3-pin connector. What else is interesting and possible for a future mod is the 3rd pin on this connector is an audio out, and it actually works. I don't know how much power is behind it, probably not much, but you could easily add a little piezo speaker or something to this and it would be pretty cool. Alright, so this is what I think is a single module, decent little rubber gasket, and this has been out in Florida weather for about a month through our wonderful thunderstorms, and yeah, it works pretty good. I'm really happy with it. Alright, so now one of the things I want to do is I notice that this camera compared to the other. When it focuses, it does it kind of odd. You can actually see the focused field of view go kind of at an angle, like the optics aren't squared up or something. And as you change focus, or as you change zoom, the focus doesn't stay constant. And the other camera does. So I'm wondering if when they put this lens on, they didn't square it up right or set it to the right depth, because I know when I've done this in other cameras, getting a zoom lens at the right distance from the CCD imager, or CMOS imager in this case, can be challenging, because you can get it so it will focus and work at both ends, but it works best when it focuses, or it maintains relatively the focus as it zooms, and life is good. All right, so this comes out. Was there another trick? Oh yeah, I got to clip this little wire, or this little zip tie here. Come on. That'll pull through enough to pull that out, and then I can disconnect this IR sensor that turns on the, or light sensor that turns on the externals. We've got some pretty cool little foam rings to help keep the light out. Yeah, that one's glued. I'm going to leave that one there. All right, so that leaves us with the 4 IR lenses. And then we have the IR board, which gets its power directly from this cable, from the stepper board. And unfortunately, you cannot turn off the infrared lights at night. They come on with the sensor, or they don't. And that's it. That is going to be a mod possibly in the future, because there are times I'd like to turn that off. Specifically, I've actually tracked satellites with this thing. And it would be nice not to have the infrared lights on lighting the bugs up in front of it while I'm trying to do stupid stuff with stars and satellites. But it's kind of cool. So it says LED Mini Dome 2+2 Pub LED version 1.0 2018. Nothing else real interesting on this. I'm surprised to see a little transformer. Must be part of the voltage regulator for this the LEDs, which is nice. They're not just using a dropper. And this is also kind of interesting. This is the Ethernet and power in for this board. And the power goes right up to this board here, which is a discrete stepper driver for the 2 stepper motors here. And then the power jumps straight out and down to the actual board camera board. So I assume that if you buy a camera that doesn't do zoom and focus, you just don't get this board, and they just hook up directly to it. And serial interface for all of the focus, zoom, pan, and tilt, which I assume is the industry standard because it does that Pelco thing, or ONVIF. ONVIF? I think that's the right word. But pretty cool. I put a little heat sink down here, but from what I can gather, the heat gets dumped down to these brass standoffs, which go off to this copper, or this aluminum backed PCB board, which then gets dumped out to this front lens assembly, because it stays pretty warm, but that also keeps the dew off, which is kind of cool. And hopefully this is in frame. Yeah, it's pretty decent. These glass lenses in the front, they're actually glass, and they're glued in with what appears to be some type of optical cement, probably just epoxy, but it's fairly weather tight. They're not anti-reflective coating. Maybe someday in the future I'll pop them out, put something else in there. But yeah, works. It's kind of cool. Our board camera, I'm going to probably mess with this a little bit just because, see if I can tweak it up. Probably end up just breaking it and putting it back together, but we'll see. It's kind of cool. So that's all the show for this. Then comes back to this next interesting bit. So this is the stepper driver board that drives the pan and tilt only, held in with 2 screws. It also does the power distribution and takes this serial input for the pan and tilt signals, which is 2400 baud serial. Go figure, right? So on this one, hopefully that's in focus. Yeah, it looks like it is. We have power and Ethernet in, power and Ethernet out, and power, I mean 12 volt power. Then we have serial in. There's 2 pins. There's actually a transmit out, but it's not hooked up to anything. As far as I can tell, it doesn't talk. And we have power to the LED boards, which is constant. And I'd like to make that switchable. I think there's a spare pin on this STM8 that I can do that. That's my next job, is I got a ST-Link programmer. I'm going to try to see if I can read the firmware on that chip, because it's not updatable. But this is the swim interface. +5, ground, swim, and reset. I think that's the order. I wrote it down somewhere. Doesn't matter. If you're doing it that far, you'll figure it out on your own. You should verify it. This is just a 8-channel transistor that drives the 2 stepper motors, and that's it. This is also what I assume is just a standard piece of video camera Lego. And then the only thing that's a little well, hacked is this power over Ethernet board. This board takes the Ethernet signal in with power over Ethernet, doesn't mess with the Ethernet part, it just does the power extraction and creates 12 and 5 volt DC and sends them out through this cable here. So we got 12 volt, we got 5 volt, we got a ground, and then we've got our 2 legs of our Ethernet, because it only supports 100 megabit, which seems to be pretty much common too. And this thing is glued in with hot glue from the factory. We got some pictures I took of it previously. I'll maybe post those in here of what it looks like from the factory. If you need to get this out, it's really easy to take out hot glue. Just put some isopropyl alcohol on it, let it sit for a minute, and it just pops right off. It's a cool trick somebody showed me, but pops right out. But here we have our cable coming in from the exterior power over Ethernet and the 12 volt connector it has on the end. And microphone, and then our Ethernet and power out. Next, we're going to take out this little stepper board, or the stepper module, which is also, it's pretty cool. There's not a lot of backlash in this thing, which I kind of expected. Usually I would have thought there's, something like this would have had a ton of backlash, but it's fairly accurate, it's fairly predictable, and very repeatable. Kind of surprised. Total azimuth pan is like 240 degrees. Right? Did I get it right? Yeah, 120 plus 130. I'm sorry, 250 degrees out of the box azimuth. Fortunately, it's not quite centered. It goes to the right, panning right, farther from center than it does panning left, which is 99% certain is just a limitation in that firmware in that ST8, which I am going to either break or improve upon. For altitude, out of the box, it goes +5 degrees above the horizon, and then it goes pretty much straight down for about 95 degrees of travel. The very first thing I did when I got this is I made a modification so that I can, instead of just going 5 degrees up, how about like this, 5 degrees up, I made it so it can go 45 degrees up. And the way you do that is there is a little limits, 2 plastic motion limits in here. When this thing initializes, it will move in azimuth till it hits a limit, and in altitude till it hits a limit. It records those as something, the end of travel, and then it moves back to its default home position. And then from that point on, to avoid running into the limits, the stepper just drives so many steps and then make sure that you don't hit those limits. So by removing this one stop, when I did the initialization, it'll now go up to 45 and then back down. The downside to that is it means I can no longer look down like I used to. which, well, it still goes about 30 degrees below the horizon, 45 degrees, so you can almost still see straight down, but that's another thing I hope to fix up. Best guess is in this little STMA, there's going to be two variables that control the total amount of steps for azimuth and altitude, and if I can just increase those, that should take care of it. So the next thing is this drivetrain, which is pretty cool. It's all plastic, but it has some actual stainless steel ball bearings in it, and altitude is ran by both gears at once through both steppers. The steppers are pretty big. Little belt drives on both sides. They cog hard, and I haven't found it to stall unless I physically grab it, and then it stalls, but it's not a big deal. So anyway, altitude is both gears moving at once, and then azimuth is just the one. So when it's spinning in azimuth, just one stepper motor's running. When it's spinning and moving in altitude, both are running. And then what melts your brain is, as it moves in a diagonal, one is moving, the other's moving more than the first, and makes my head hurt. But it's pretty cool. So that's about all of it. I did want to take out this gears because they've been running for about a month, and I've got scripts that keep this thing constantly moving because I think it's funny. ZoneMinder is pretty cool. This does interact with ZoneMinder pretty decent with the OnVIF protocol. There's a post on the forum for it, which got me going. It was pretty cool. To get this aluminum base off, there's 4 screws that you can get to, but you have to take the stepper board out first to get to these. And they're stainless steel, which also sort of surprised me. And this whole drive mechanism is pretty damn clever and pretty simple. Probably industry standard, and I just think it's clever because I've never seen one before. But it's pretty cool. The backlash is, I'm still surprised by the lack of backlash. It's pretty tight. When you just hold it by hand, you can't feel any backlash in it. And in practice, it works pretty good. The only backlash that's in the system that is somewhat annoying is in the focus mechanism and the zoom to some extent, but that doesn't really bother me. The focus is a pain in the butt because while it has autofocus and it works pretty good daylight and okay at night as long as it has something to see, the problem with it is if the autofocus doesn't work out for you and you're trying to manually focus it, the backlash, you go past the focus, you saw it in focus, because there's some lag in the video delay of a half second or so. You see it go in focus and then out, and you're like, okay, I'm really close, let me go back, and you press the back button a couple times and nothing happens as it takes up the backlash, and then you press it again and it goes bzz, right past it again, and you're like, son of a bitch. And you end up playing with the zoom or the focus constantly, and yeah, it's a little annoying, especially if you're trying to focus like on stars, which is not a normal use case, I know. Alright, so with those 4 screws out, this bottom pops out, there's a silicone O-ring, and now we have to feed these cables out. And this took me a minute to figure out the first time. So, silicone O-ring, pretty decent. I think I put lube on that already. This is our azimuth gear. It doesn't move. That's our azimuth limit post, which bumps into this little guy right here to stop the azimuth travel. And it picks up that azimuth drive through this side gear right here. And of course there isn't one on this side, just the stop for the azimuth travel. Then figuring out how to get these out took me a bit, but it was really easy. All you need to do is reach down in here, and just give that a gentle pry, and that'll pop out like that. And this is now our azimuth gear. 2 more silicone O-rings. It's all plastic, but there are in between here some stainless bearings. At least I think they're stainless. They haven't rusted yet. There's 3 moving parts. We have the gear that goes through to this one, and then this seals up against this plastic bushing here. This seals up against the non-moving part, so that outer part can move too, and then the gear can move. Yeah, I think you can see that. So that's pretty cool. And repeat it with this. Give that a little gentle push. We can take that out. This is the elevation side for altitude. This gear does not move, obviously, it's fixed. The center section does move. And I'm trying to remember where I saw the stupid ball bearings. They're in there. Oh, I think I saw it through that hole right there somewhere. You just have to trust me, there's ball bearings in here. But this is pretty clever. I've had a humidity meter, just one of these paper ones that came with some components I purchased. I had it in the other one for a while, and I pulled it out and looked, and it's staying dry inside. There's no humidity ingress, which is pretty cool. And yeah. So the modification I did, if we can see this and see down, there are, right here, there's a stop. There used to be another stop right here. Yeah, right there, something like that. There used to be a stop there. I took it out, and that now lets this unit pivot up farther before it hits the stop, so I can get about 45 degrees of altitude. Because I bought this back when Starlink went live, and I saw all those cool, awesome shots of the satellites all in a row. I'm like, you know, it'd be cool if I had a camera that could look up and see that, if it's possible. And I looked at this one and went, well, I'm going to take it apart and see if that's possible. And it was pretty cool. So anyway, I think that's all the major bits and pieces. I may throw some individual stills towards the end of this or in the middle. This little unit is all one piece, and it says, yeah, Huisun, who knows, Huisun, which I'm assuming it's another one of these industrial Lego blocks. I don't really see any major wear in those gears, and it's been going 24/7 for about a month. It's gotten quieter. And oh, one thing, this microphone, it's horrible for wind noise. However, if you can get a piece of closed cell foam, this was just something that came out of a piece of packing material, and I took a little bit of hot glue, and you hot glue it over like that. It works as a wind sock, so to speak, or a wind mask, and makes all that horrible wind noise go away for the most part. And it doesn't seem to affect the sensitivity. This thing's got a pretty cool microphone preamp in it that's really good at taking out repetitive noise. I'll put another video up with a bunch of sample videos and stuff, and before and after my little foam mod. But just make sure it's, you know, open cell or closed cell. I think it's closed cell. Hell, I don't know. I'm not a foam expert. Talk to AVE. He probably knows. But I think it's closed cell foam. But I don't know. Whatever you have, something soft, hot glue it, or find out there's some way to fix it. I'm not too keen on this whole hot glue down here. I have some of this black hot glue, which is kind of cool. I scraped off some of this white mask or whatever that is, silicon carney stuff, and just to look around to see if this board might be doing other magic with the Ethernet. And no, it's just taking the power in, running it through the transformer, rectifying it, and then making the 5 and 12 volt outputs, and then the outputs end up coming out here with the Ethernet just passing through effectively. So it's basically Lego. You get the board cam with or without the pan and zoom feature, and I'm certain this is also made by one manufacturer. I thought I saw a HIC logo on this somewhere. I'll try to post a picture, but I know it says it's an M400 somewhere on a sticker. MC400L, but that's on that transformer. I don't know if that's the transformer or not. But anyway, I'll post some pictures if I find anything interesting at the end of this. But you get this board cam that has Lego logic in it. It either does or doesn't have the zoom and focus control. And then they sell one with an Ethernet connection or power over Ethernet like this, and for that they add this power over Ethernet board, which just extracts the power and feeds it to the regular camera. Then for the pan, tilt, zoom, or for the pan and zoom option, they just add this little stepper board, which is just controlled by a serial. And so if you didn't have the pan and zoom version, they'd just take the output of this and feed it right into the camera in a different housing apparently. If you wanted the Wi-Fi version one, I know they replace this with a Wi-Fi chip, and then you just feed it power from the external. And so it's kind of like Legos. And as far as I can tell, I think I've seen 3 different manufacturers inside of here, which makes sense. The software that comes with it is meh. I mean, it's okay, it works. The web interface is horrible. It only works in Internet Explorer 11, which, well, enough said. You can configure most of the stuff through Chrome or Firefox. You just can't watch the video reliably. The little IP camera they have, or IP NVR software that comes with it, it's okay. Yeah, it's kind of handy. It has a variety of pan and tilt features, like an orbit function, a guard function, which I haven't figured out if it does anything yet. And the one I use most often is you can program up to 9 different waypoints or set points, and then you call this option 98, and it'll just run around between each of your up to 9 recorded stops and stay there for like 20 seconds and then move over to the next one. The only thing I wish you could do on that is you can't control the speed at which it traverses from one recorded position to the other. So it goes pretty fast and it triggers all my damn alarms. But you can use, right now I'm just using like a curl script to just say pan left slowly for 30 seconds, stop, pan right slowly for 30 seconds. And you can include the pan speed in a command like that, which emulates what you do through the interface. And that moves slow enough it doesn't trip off all my motion sensors, which is kind of useful. And the thing is, it's silent. You can't hear it run when you're standing next to it. And it throws a ton of light. Videos to come on that. Anyway, let me go see if I can fry this STM8 with my little stupid ST-Link chip I just got. Never done this before, but I've done other in-chip programming. It shouldn't be too hard. Anyway, I guess that's it. Good luck. Bye.